There's a moment that happens 3 seconds before you consciously make a decision, when your body already knows what you're going to choose. Your heart rate changes, your skin conductance shifts, your brain waves alter their patterns, all before your conscious mind has any awareness of the choice being made. This isn't just nervous system preparation. It's evidence that your consciousness is receiving information from future probability streams and using that data to guide present-moment decisions through temporal feedback loops that most people never realize exist. Dr. Benjamin Libet's groundbreaking experiments in the 1980s first revealed this temporal mystery when he discovered that brain activity indicating a person's choice occurred several hundred milliseconds before they reported being aware of their intention to act. The readiness potential, a buildup of electrical activity in the motor cortex, consistently appeared before conscious awareness of the decision to move. But Libet's work was just the beginning of a revolution in our understanding of how consciousness operates across time. Dr. Daryl Bem's controversial precognition experiments took this temporal anomaly much further, demonstrating that people could respond to future events before those events were randomly determined by computer programs. In over 100 experiments involving thousands of participants, Bem showed that human behavior patterns shift in response to future stimuli that haven't yet occurred. Participants consistently moved toward targets that would later be randomly designated as correct, as if their consciousness was sampling future probability outcomes and steering present behavior toward optimal results. The implications are staggering. If consciousness can access information from future probability streams, then every decision you make, every intuitive hunch you follow, every gut feeling you experience might be your future self sending information backward through time to guide your present choices toward optimal outcomes. If you can feel your consciousness recognizing this truth, that your future is actively communicating with your present, type 777 in the comments below. This isn't just acknowledgement, it's your first conscious participation in the temporal feedback loops that have been operating through your awareness your entire life. The temporal field responds to consciousness with infinite patience and unlimited potential. It contains information about all possible futures and the wisdom to guide optimal choice patterns that serve the highest good of all existence. Your participation in conscious temporal navigation becomes service to universal evolution through the development of capabilities that represent your deepest nature as cosmic consciousness, expressing itself through individual temporal perspective. What temporal possibilities will you choose to explore? What future probability patterns will you help manifest through conscious temporal navigation? What role will you play in humanity's evolutionary awakening to expanded temporal consciousness that could transform our species into conscious participants in cosmic evolution? The temporal field of infinite possibility awaits your conscious participation in the eternal dance of time, consciousness, and cosmic creation. The most profound discoveries in temporal consciousness research are emerging from laboratories where scientists are documenting unprecedented anomalies that challenge everything we thought we knew about the relationship between mind and time. Dr. William Tiller's experiments at Stanford University demonstrate that human intention can create measurable changes in physical space that persist for months after the intention is withdrawn. But his most startling findings involve temporal displacement effects where the changes appear to begin before the intention is consciously formed. When research subjects focus coherent intention on altering the pH of water samples, the water begins showing measurable changes days or weeks before the intention sessions occur. Tiller's monitoring equipment records the temporal signature of these changes, revealing that consciousness appears to create temporal field distortions that ripple both forward and backward through time from the moment of focused intention. These temporal field effects operate through what Tiller calls consciousness-matter interaction zones, where focused human awareness creates persistent changes in the quantum vacuum structure of space. Once these zones are established through sustained intention, they continue influencing physical systems independently of the original consciousness input, as if consciousness has programmed temporal algorithms into the fabric of space-time itself. Dr. Lynn McTaggart's global intention experiments have revealed similar temporal anomalies on a massive scale. When thousands of participants worldwide focus collective intention on specific targets healing particular individuals, influencing plant growth rates, or affecting social conditions in designated geographic areas. The target systems often begin showing measurable changes during the weeks leading up to the scheduled intention events. The Peace Intention experiment focused collective intention on reducing violence in specific conflict zones around the world. Statistical analysis revealed that violence levels began decreasing in target areas up to 2 weeks before the scheduled global intention sessions, suggesting that future collective consciousness activities create temporal ripples that influence preceding time periods throughout the targeted regions. McTaggart's research indicates that collective human intention operates through temporal field effects that can influence probability distributions across extended time periods. When large groups achieve coherent focus on specific outcomes, they appear to create temporal influence zones where the laws of probability shift toward the intended outcomes both before and after the actual intention sessions. Dr. Robert Jahn's Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Laboratory documented thousands of cases where human operators influenced random event generators through pure intention. But the most significant findings involved temporal displacement effects. Random sequences often began showing non-random patterns that corresponded to specific operator intentions hours or days before the operators arrived at the laboratory to attempt influencing the machines. These pre-effects suggest that consciousness operates through temporal field interactions that transcend the immediate present moment. When operators developed strong intentions to influence specific random sequences, the temporal fields surrounding those intentions apparently reached backward through time to begin influencing the target systems before the conscious intention efforts occurred. Jahn's research revealed that temporal influence effects are enhanced when operators achieve what he termed resonant consciousness states, conditions, where individual awareness synchronizes with the quantum field fluctuations that underlie random system behavior. In these resonant states, consciousness appears to achieve direct interface with the temporal substrate that coordinates random event sequences. The implications extend beyond laboratory experiments to everyday life phenomena that most people experience but rarely understand in temporal consciousness terms. Dr. Bernard Grad's research on healing abilities shows that individuals with natural healing gifts often report sensing their patients' conditions improving before they begin treatment sessions, as if their healing intention reaches forward through time to begin creating beneficial changes. Grad's controlled studies with healers demonstrate measurable biological improvements in plants and laboratory animals that begin appearing before the scheduled healing sessions occur. Seed germination rates accelerate, wound healing improves, and stress indicators decrease in target organisms during time periods preceding direct healer contact, suggesting that healing intention creates temporal field effects that optimize biological systems across extended time windows. These healing temporal effects appear to operate through morphic field resonance patterns that connect healer consciousness with target biological systems across space and time. When healers achieve sufficiently coherent intention states, their awareness apparently synchronizes with the temporal field patterns that coordinate biological healing processes, creating optimization effects that transcend normal space-time boundaries. Dr. Marilyn Schlitz's research at the Institute of Noetic Sciences has documented temporal healing effects in double-blind experimental protocols, where neither healers nor patients know when healing sessions are scheduled to occur. Despite this experimental isolation, patients' physiological indicators often begin improving during time periods that later turn out to correspond with distant healing efforts, even when no one involved in the experiment knows the healing schedule in advance. These findings suggest that healing consciousness operates through temporal field connections that don't depend on normal information transfer between healer and patient. The healing effects appear to propagate through quantum field correlations that operate outside classical space-time constraints, creating beneficial influences that can reach both forward and backward through time. But temporal consciousness effects extend beyond individual healing to include collective precognitive phenomena that suggest entire populations respond to future events through unconscious behavioral changes. Dr. William Cox's statistical analysis of transportation accident patterns reveals temporal anomalies that point to collective precognitive awareness operating through everyday decision-making processes. Trains that later experience fatal accidents consistently carry significantly fewer passengers than statistical predictions would indicate, while airlines' flights that later crash show unusual patterns of last-minute cancellations and no-show passengers. These patterns suggest that collective human consciousness detects dangerous future probability patterns and unconsciously steers people away from harmful situations through subtle behavioral modifications. The mechanism appears to involve what Cox terms psi-mediated instrumental response, where consciousness automatically optimizes behavior patterns to avoid negative future outcomes without conscious awareness of the guidance process. People make seemingly random decisions to change travel plans, delay departure times, or avoid specific transportation options based on unconscious temporal information about future probability patterns. Dr. Spottiswood's analysis of global precognitive research data reveals temporal patterns that suggest human consciousness naturally operates with enhanced temporal sensitivity during specific time periods when the Earth's geomagnetic field fluctuations create optimal conditions for temporal information access. Precognitive abilities show significant enhancement during periods of low geomagnetic activity, indicating that consciousness-time interactions are influenced by planetary electromagnetic field conditions. These geomagnetic correlation patterns suggest that consciousness operates through electromagnetic field interfaces that connect individual awareness with planetary and cosmic temporal rhythms. During periods of geomagnetic calm, consciousness appears to gain enhanced access to temporal information streams that extend across past and future time periods. The ancient practice of astrology may have been based on recognition that cosmic electromagnetic cycles influence consciousness temporal abilities. Planetary alignments and solar activity patterns create geomagnetic field variations that appear to modulate human access to temporal information, creating predictable cycles of enhanced or diminished precognitive ability. Dr. Stanley Krippner's research on circadian rhythms and psychic abilities shows that temporal perception abilities fluctuate according to natural biological cycles that appear to be synchronized with cosmic time patterns. Precognitive dreams occur most frequently during specific sleep phases that correspond to periods when the Earth's electromagnetic field resonates with solar wind fluctuations, creating optimal conditions for consciousness to access temporal information streams. The pineal gland, often called the body's biological clock, appears to function as a temporal sensitivity organ that modulates consciousness access to future probability information. During periods of enhanced pineal activity, individuals report increased precognitive dreams, intuitive insights about future events, and spontaneous awareness of approaching changes in their life circumstances. Dr. Russell Reiter's research on pineal gland function reveals that this small brain structure responds to electromagnetic field variations with changes in melatonin production patterns that influence consciousness states and temporal perception abilities. When geomagnetic activity is low, pineal melatonin rhythms create brain chemistry conditions that appear to optimize consciousness for temporal information processing. These findings suggest that developing temporal perception abilities may involve learning to recognize and work with natural biological and cosmic cycles that influence consciousness, temporal sensitivity. Advanced practitioners often report enhanced precognitive abilities during specific moon phases, seasonal transitions, and periods of unusual solar activity. Dr. Franz Hallberg's chronobiology research documents biological rhythm patterns that appear to be synchronized with cosmic cycles, extending far beyond normal circadian patterns. Human physiological rhythms show correlations with solar magnetic field cycles, galactic rotation periods, and other cosmic time patterns that suggest consciousness operates within a vast temporal field that encompasses multiple scales of cosmic time. When consciousness achieves synchronization with these larger temporal rhythms, individuals appear to gain access to temporal information that extends across vastly expanded timescales. Some advanced practitioners report precognitive awareness that extends years or decades into the future, as if their consciousness has learned to interface with cosmic-scale temporal patterns. The ancient Maya civilization appears to have developed sophisticated understanding of these consciousness-cosmic time correlations through their complex calendar systems that tracked multiple, overlapping temporal cycles. The Maya long count calendar may have been designed to map periods of enhanced collective consciousness temporal abilities that correspond to specific cosmic alignment patterns. Dr. Jose Arguelles's research on Maya time philosophy suggests that ancient civilizations understood consciousness as a temporal navigation system that could access information from multiple time streams simultaneously. The Maya concept of galactic synchronization describes consciousness states where individual awareness achieves resonance with cosmic temporal patterns that provide access to information from past and future time periods across vast scales. Modern research is beginning to validate these ancient temporal consciousness concepts through laboratory studies that demonstrate consciousness can indeed access information across time scales that extend far beyond individual lifetimes. Dr. Ian Stevenson's research on children with past life memories documents cases where young children demonstrate detailed knowledge about deceased individuals they could not have learned through normal means. Stevenson's documentation of over 3,000 cases reveals patterns suggesting that consciousness can access memory patterns from previous lifetimes and integrate this temporal information into present experience. The children typically demonstrate not just factual knowledge about past individuals, but also behavioral patterns, skills, and emotional responses that appear to carry forward across temporal boundaries that transcend individual biological existence. Dr. Jim Tucker's continuation of this research at the University of Virginia shows that past life memory cases often include precognitive elements where children demonstrate knowledge about future events in the lives of the deceased individuals they remember being. These cases suggest that consciousness can access temporal information that spans multiple lifetimes and includes future probability patterns that extend beyond individual biological time boundaries. The implications are staggering. If consciousness can access memory and probability patterns from past and future lifetimes, then individual temporal awareness may be connected to vast consciousness networks that extend across multiple incarnations and time periods. Personal temporal navigation abilities may represent access to collective consciousness, temporal fields that contain accumulated wisdom and probability information from extended periods of human experience. Dr. Michael Newton's research on past life regression and between life states documents thousands of cases where individuals report accessing expanded temporal awareness during deep hypnotic states that allow consciousness to perceive entire lifetime patterns as unified temporal structures. Subjects describe experiencing their current lifetime from the perspective of expanded temporal awareness that encompasses past and future lifetime possibilities. Newton's research suggests that consciousness naturally operates from expanded temporal perspectives that transcend individual lifetime boundaries, but these perspectives are typically filtered through biological brain limitations that focus awareness on immediate present-moment experience. During altered states that bypass normal brain filtering, consciousness can access its natural temporal scope that extends across multiple lifetimes and time periods. Dr. Brian Weiss's clinical research with past life regression therapy shows that accessing expanded temporal awareness can produce healing effects that appear to operate retroactively across lifetime boundaries. When patients resolve emotional traumas from past life memories, they often experience immediate healing of physical conditions in their present lifetime that appear to be connected to the past life trauma patterns. These healing effects suggest that consciousness can influence past life experience patterns through present moment therapeutic work, creating temporal healing loops that optimize entire lifetime trajectories through conscious intervention at specific temporal focal points. Personal healing work may literally be healing past life trauma patterns and optimizing future lifetime possibilities through expanded temporal awareness intervention. The most advanced temporal consciousness research is revealing that individual awareness may be expressions of vast cosmic consciousness systems that operate across multiple temporal dimensions simultaneously. Dr. Amit Goswami's quantum consciousness research suggests that individual minds are localized expressions of universal consciousness that naturally exists outside linear time constraints. From this perspective, developing temporal perception abilities involves learning to access the expanded temporal awareness that represents your true nature as cosmic consciousness expressing itself through individual perspective. Personal consciousness development becomes a process of remembering your natural temporal scope that transcends individual lifetime limitations. Dr. Stanislav Grof's research with consciousness-expanding substances and non-ordinary states of consciousness documents thousands of cases where individuals access what he terms transpersonal experiences that provide direct access to temporal information spanning cosmic scales. Participants report experiencing consciousness from perspectives that encompass entire evolutionary periods, cosmic cycles, and multiple dimensional realities. Grof's research indicates that these expanded temporal experiences aren't hallucinations, but represent access to actual temporal information that exists within cosmic consciousness fields. When normal space-time constraints on individual awareness are temporarily suspended, consciousness can access its natural cosmic temporal scope, that includes information from vast time periods and multiple reality dimensions. Dr. Rick Strassman's research with DMT and consciousness reveals that this naturally occurring brain chemical appears to provide rapid access to expanded temporal awareness states where individuals report detailed interactions with non-physical beings and access to information about future probability patterns that later prove accurate. DMT experiences often include precognitive elements that suggest consciousness can access temporal information from expanded reality dimensions. These consciousness research findings converge on a revolutionary understanding of human temporal potential. Consciousness naturally operates across multiple temporal dimensions and time scales, but these capabilities are typically filtered through biological brain limitations that focus awareness on immediate present moment survival needs. Developing temporal perception abilities involves learning to access expanded consciousness states that reveal your natural temporal scope. Dr. Charles Tart's research on state-specific learning shows that consciousness capabilities developed in expanded awareness states can be integrated into normal waking consciousness through systematic training protocols that teach individuals to maintain access to expanded temporal information while functioning in ordinary reality circumstances. The training involves learning to recognize the subtle consciousness state shifts that provide access to temporal information, developing discrimination between authentic temporal information and imagination or projection, and practicing the integration of temporal guidance into practical decision-making processes. Dr. Russell Targ's practical remote viewing training protocols demonstrate that temporal perception abilities can be developed as reliable skills through structured practice that teaches consciousness to access non-local and temporal information streams on demand. Students learn to achieve consciousness states that provide consistent access to temporal information with accuracy levels that significantly exceed chance expectations. The most effective temporal perception training combines meditation techniques for consciousness state control with specific exercises for temporal information access and rigorous feedback systems for calibrating accuracy. Students develop the ability to distinguish between different types of temporal information, past memory patterns, present probability assessments, and future possibility information, and learn to apply this temporal guidance for enhanced life navigation. Dr. Stefan Schwartz's research on practical applications of temporal perception shows that individuals who develop reliable access to future probability information demonstrate significantly enhanced decision-making effectiveness across multiple life domains. Business decisions, relationship choices, health interventions, and creative projects all benefit from consciousness that can access temporal information about probable outcomes of different choice options. The key insight from applied temporal perception research is that future information access doesn't eliminate free will, but enhances it by providing expanded information about the probable consequences of different choice options. When consciousness can sample future probability streams, decision-making becomes more informed and aligned with optimal outcome patterns. Dr. Hal Puthoff's theoretical research on consciousness and quantum field interactions suggests that temporal perception abilities may represent access to information contained in the quantum vacuum field that underlies all space-time phenomena. This quantum information field appears to contain patterns for all possible space-time configurations, including future probability patterns that consciousness can access through quantum resonance effects. When consciousness achieves sufficient coherence and focus, it may quantum entangle with information patterns in the vacuum field that correspond to future probability configurations. This quantum entanglement provides direct access to future information through non-local correlation effects that transcend normal space-time limitations and enable consciousness to navigate probability patterns with enhanced precision. The implications for human potential development are extraordinary. If consciousness can reliably interface with quantum information fields that contain future probability patterns, then developing these abilities becomes essential for optimal navigation through increasingly complex personal and collective choice landscapes. Every decision you face exists within vast probability fields that extend across multiple temporal dimensions and connect with the choices of countless other conscious beings. Your consciousness has natural capabilities for sampling these temporal probability spaces and selecting choices that align with optimal outcome patterns, not just for yourself, but for the collective good of all life. Dr. Ervin Laszlo's research on the Akashic field suggests that consciousness operates within a cosmic information field that contains the memory patterns and probability information of all conscious experiences throughout the universe. This Akashic field appears to function as a cosmic temporal library that consciousness can access for guidance about optimal choice patterns that serve universal evolution. When consciousness develops sufficient expansion and coherence, it can access Akashic field information that provides temporal guidance aligned with cosmic intelligence patterns. Personal decision-making becomes informed by universal wisdom that extends across vast time scales and encompasses the welfare of all conscious beings throughout the cosmos. The ancient teaching about "Thy will be done" may describe this state where personal consciousness aligns with cosmic intelligence patterns, gaining access to temporal guidance that serves universal good while simultaneously optimizing personal life trajectory. Individual temporal navigation becomes service to cosmic evolution through conscious participation in universal intelligence patterns. Dr. Jean Houston's research on consciousness potential suggests that humanity is currently undergoing an evolutionary transformation that involves widespread activation of expanded temporal awareness capabilities. The increasing frequency of reported precognitive experiences, temporal anomalies, and consciousness phenomena may indicate collective awakening to natural temporal navigation abilities that represent the next stage of human evolution. This evolutionary activation of temporal consciousness may be essential for humanity to successfully navigate the complex global challenges that require enhanced collective decision-making capabilities. Climate change, technological disruption, social transformation, and consciousness evolution all present choice landscapes that extend across multiple temporal dimensions and require expanded temporal awareness for optimal navigation. Your development of temporal perception abilities isn't just personal growth, it's participation in collective human evolution toward expanded temporal consciousness that could determine whether our species successfully transitions to higher levels of cosmic consciousness or remains trapped in limited linear time perspectives that generate conflict and environmental destruction. The quantum field of temporal possibilities responds to consciousness development. Every individual who develops enhanced temporal awareness contributes to collective human capability for temporal navigation. As more people access future probability information and learn to optimize choice patterns through temporal guidance, collective human decision-making becomes increasingly aligned with beneficial outcome patterns. Dr. Peter Russell's research on collective consciousness evolution suggests that humanity may be approaching a consciousness singularity where sufficient numbers of individuals develop expanded awareness capabilities to create a phase transition in collective human consciousness. This transformation could include widespread activation of temporal perception abilities that enable conscious collective navigation toward optimal future probability patterns. The ancient prophecies about human awakening to divine capabilities may describe this evolutionary activation of natural consciousness potentials that include temporal navigation abilities. As individuals learn to operate from expanded temporal awareness, collective humanity could develop the wisdom to consciously guide planetary evolution toward beneficial outcomes that serve all life. Your participation in this consciousness evolution through developing temporal perception abilities represents contribution to one of the most significant transformative processes in human history. Every moment of expanded temporal awareness, every successful access to future probability information, every choice made through temporal guidance contributes to collective human awakening to natural consciousness capabilities that transcend current limitations. The temporal field of consciousness is waiting for widespread human recognition and development. The future of human potential lies in conscious activation of natural temporal navigation abilities that transform existence from reactive survival patterns to creative collaboration with the infinite temporal possibilities that exist within cosmic consciousness. Your consciousness naturally spans multiple temporal dimensions and contains access to vast probability information that can guide optimal choice patterns. The question isn't whether these temporal capabilities exist. Research has established their reality. The question is whether you'll develop conscious access to your natural temporal navigation abilities and use them to participate in the conscious evolution of human potential. The time loops of consciousness aren't just scientific phenomena. They're invitation to participate consciously in the temporal orchestration of existence at scales ranging from personal life optimization to cosmic evolution itself. Your future self is calling backward through time, inviting you to embrace your role as a conscious temporal navigator in the vast dance of possibility that is reality itself. The temporal field responds to consciousness with infinite patience and unlimited potential. It contains information about all possible futures and the wisdom to guide optimal choice patterns that serve the highest good of all existence. Your participation in conscious temporal navigation becomes service to universal evolution through the development of capabilities that represent your deepest nature as cosmic consciousness, expressing itself through individual temporal perspective. What temporal possibilities will you choose to explore? What future probability patterns will you help manifest through conscious temporal navigation? What role will you play in humanity's evolutionary awakening to expanded temporal consciousness that could transform our species into conscious participants in cosmic evolution? The temporal field of infinite possibility awaits your conscious participation in the eternal dance of time, consciousness, and cosmic creation. Time loops of consciousness. How your future programs your present. There's a moment that happens 3 seconds before you consciously make a decision, when your body already knows what you're going to choose. Your heart rate changes, your skin conductance shifts, your brain waves alter their patterns, all before your conscious mind has any awareness of the choice being made. This isn't just nervous system preparation. It's evidence that your consciousness is receiving information from future probability streams and using that data to guide present moment decisions through temporal feedback loops that most people never realize exist. Dr. Benjamin Libet's groundbreaking experiments in the 1980s first revealed this temporal mystery when he discovered that brain activity indicating a person's choice occurred several hundred milliseconds before they reported being aware of their intention to act. The readiness, potential, A buildup of electrical activity in the motor cortex consistently appeared before conscious awareness of the decision to move. But Libet's work was just the beginning of a revolution in our understanding of how consciousness operates across time. Dr. Daryl Bem's controversial precognition experiments took this temporal anomaly much further, demonstrating that people could respond to future events before those events were randomly determined by computer programs. In over 100 experiments involving thousands of participants, Bem showed that human behavior patterns shift in response to future stimuli that haven't yet occurred. Participants consistently moved toward targets that would later be randomly designated as correct, as if their consciousness was sampling future probability outcomes and steering present behavior toward optimal results. The implications are staggering. If consciousness can access information from future probability streams, then every decision you make, every intuitive hunch you follow, every gut feeling you experience might be your future self sending information backward through time to guide your present choices toward optimal outcomes. If you can feel your consciousness recognizing this truth, that your future is actively communicating with your present type 7007 in the comments below. This isn't just acknowledgement, it's your first conscious participation in the temporal feedback loops that have been operating through your awareness your entire life. Dr. Julia Mossbridge's research on unconscious emotional precognition reveals that this temporal information transfer operates primarily below the threshold of conscious awareness. Her experiments show that people's emotional and physiological systems begin responding to future events up to 10 seconds before those events occur, even when there's no possible way for participants to have normal sensory information about what's coming. The autonomic nervous system appears to be constantly sampling future probability streams, using this information to prepare the body for optimal responses to upcoming situations. Your heart rate, blood pressure, skin conductance, and stress hormone levels are all adjusting based on events that haven't happened yet, but exist as quantum probabilities in future temporal space. Dr. Dick Bierman's laboratory at the University of Amsterdam has replicated these findings across multiple experimental paradigms, showing that the brain's electrical activity changes in response to future emotional stimuli, regardless of the specific experimental design. Whether participants are about to see disturbing images, hear loud sounds, or experience other emotionally significant events, their brain patterns begin shifting toward appropriate responses before the future events are randomly selected. This suggests that consciousness isn't trapped in linear time, but operates as a temporal navigation system that can access information from multiple timeline probabilities and use that data to optimize present moment choices. Your awareness exists in constant communication with potential future versions of yourself across parallel probability streams. Ancient wisdom traditions understood this principle. The concept of prophecy wasn't supernatural gift, but recognition that consciousness can extend across temporal dimensions to access information about probable futures and use it to guide present decision-making. Modern neuroscience is validating what mystics have always known: consciousness transcends linear time. Dr. Caroline Watts' meta-analyses of precognition research show effect sizes that, while small, are statistically robust and consistent across laboratories, cultures, and experimental methodologies. The effect appears to be a fundamental property of consciousness rather than an anomaly or measurement error. Consciousness naturally operates with temporal scope that extends beyond the immediate present moment. But here's where it gets revolutionary. If consciousness can receive information from future probability streams, it can also send information backward through time. Every highly coherent, emotionally charged, or intensely focused state you achieve creates temporal ripples that influence your past decision points, creating closed causal loops where your present choices and future outcomes exist in quantum entanglement across time. The quantum physicists have a framework for understanding this temporal mystery. Dr. John Wheeler's delayed choice quantum eraser experiments demonstrated that decisions made in the present can retroactively determine what happened in the past. When quantum particles are observed at one point in time, this observation can influence the behavior of those same particles at earlier points in their timeline, suggesting that causation can flow backward through time at the quantum level. Dr. Yakir Aharonov's two-state vector formalism provides a mathematical description of how quantum systems can be influenced by both past and future boundary conditions simultaneously. In this framework, the complete description of a quantum system requires knowledge of both its initial state and its final measurement outcome. The future partially determines the past, and the past partially determines the future, creating temporal correlations that transcend classical causality. Dr. Hugh Price's research on time-symmetric interpretations of quantum mechanics suggests that the arrow of time may be far more flexible than our everyday experience suggests. At the quantum level, temporal processes can operate in both forward and backward directions, with quantum correlations connecting events across past and future in ways that challenge our linear understanding of causation. When you apply these quantum mechanical principles to consciousness research, a picture emerges of awareness operating as a temporal field phenomenon that can access information from multiple points along its own timeline. Your consciousness exists not just in the present moment, but extends across past and future probability spaces, creating temporal feedback loops that continuously optimize your decision-making processes. Dr. Paul Davies's work on retrocausality in quantum systems shows that certain quantum measurements can influence the history of the particles being measured, effectively changing the past through present observations. If consciousness operates through quantum processes in brain microtubules, as suggested by the Penrose-Hameroff model, then conscious decisions might literally be able to influence past events within your personal timeline. This explains phenomena that have puzzled researchers for decades. Why do people often report having dreams about future events that later occur exactly as dreamed? Why do some individuals seem to have uncanny ability to avoid disasters by making seemingly random decisions to change their plans? Why do synchronicities cluster around major life transitions and important decisions? The answer appears to be that consciousness operates through temporal feedback loops, where future probability outcomes send information backward through time to influence present decision-making processes. Your future self is constantly communicating with your present self through quantum channels that operate outside linear time constraints. Dr. Helmut Schmidt's research with random event generators shows that focused human intention can influence random quantum processes, not just in real time, but retroactively, affecting events that occurred before the intention was formed. When participants focused intention on previously recorded random sequences, the sequences showed non-random patterns that correlated with the later intention, suggesting that consciousness can reach backward through time to influence events in its own past. These temporal influence effects appear to operate through what researchers call time loops or causal loops, where future states influence past conditions, which then lead to those same future states. Your consciousness may be continuously creating and navigating these temporal loops to optimize your life trajectory across multiple timeline possibilities. The implications for understanding human potential are profound. If your consciousness can access information from future probability streams and influence past decision points, then you're not merely reacting to circumstances as they unfold. You're actively participating in a temporal orchestration process where your present choices, past experiences, and future possibilities exist in dynamic interaction across time. Dr. Henry Stapp's interpretation of quantum mechanics emphasizes the role of consciousness in collapsing quantum probability waves into specific outcomes. If this collapse process can operate retroactively through time, then your present moment awareness might be continuously reaching both forward and backward along your timeline to select optimal probability sequences and collapse them into your experienced reality. This temporal aspect of consciousness helps explain why certain meditation practices and consciousness development techniques seem to create changes that affect not just future experiences, but also alter the meaning and impact of past events. When consciousness achieves sufficient coherence and clarity, it can apparently optimize entire timeline sequences through temporal feedback effects. Advanced practitioners often report experiencing states where they perceive their entire life timeline as a single, coherent pattern rather than a sequence of separate events. In these expanded awareness states, past, present, and future appear as different aspects of a unified temporal structure that can be perceived and influenced as a whole. Dr. Fred Alan Wolf's research on quantum consciousness suggests that awareness operates through quantum field effects that naturally transcend linear time boundaries. When consciousness achieves quantum coherence, it can interface with the quantum vacuum field that underlies space-time itself, gaining access to information and influence capabilities that extend across past and future dimensions. The ancient concept of karma may actually describe these temporal feedback loops in consciousness. Actions and intentions create temporal ripples that influence future conditions, which then send information backward to influence present decision-making processes. What appears to be moral or spiritual law may actually be temporal mechanics operating through consciousness field effects. Dr. Stuart Hameroff's research on quantum processes in brain microtubules suggests that consciousness naturally operates at timescales where quantum temporal effects become significant. At the quantum level, the distinction between past and future becomes fluid, allowing consciousness to access temporal information that extends beyond the classical present moment. But these temporal capabilities of consciousness aren't limited to individual experience. Research indicates that consciousness can create temporal correlations between different individuals and even across collective groups, suggesting that temporal feedback loops operate not just within individual timelines, but across interconnected consciousness networks. Dr. Roger Nelson's Global Consciousness Project has documented correlations between collective human attention and random quantum processes that occur not just during major global events, but in the hours and sometimes days preceding those events. It appears that collective human consciousness begins responding to future events before those events occur, creating temporal anomalies in random data that serve as early warning systems for significant future occurrences. Dr. Edwin May's research on associative remote viewing shows that people can accurately describe target locations that won't be randomly selected until after they make their descriptions. Participants consistently demonstrate the ability to perceive and describe future targets with statistical accuracy that far exceeds chance, suggesting that consciousness can reliably access information from future probability streams. These effects appear to operate through what researchers call displacement in time, where consciousness naturally samples information from temporal periods surrounding the present moment, rather than being confined to the immediate now. Your awareness exists in constant temporal motion, gathering information from past memories and future probabilities to inform present decision-making processes. Dr. William Cox's statistical analysis of accident patterns reveals temporal anomalies that suggest collective precognitive awareness. Trains that later crash carry significantly fewer passengers than statistical norms would predict, while hotels that later catch fire have unusual numbers of last-minute cancellations. These patterns suggest that collective human consciousness responds to future dangerous events by unconsciously steering people away from harmful probability streams. The mechanism appears to involve what researchers call psi-mediated instrumental response, where consciousness automatically optimizes behavior patterns to achieve desired outcomes without conscious awareness of the guiding process. Your decisions about which route to take to work, when to make phone calls, whether to attend events, and countless other daily choices may be continuously guided by temporal feedback from future probability outcomes. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake's research on morphic fields suggests that consciousness creates information fields that transcend normal space-time boundaries. When someone develops a new capability or achieves a breakthrough insight, this information becomes available to others through morphic field resonance that operates across both spatial and temporal dimensions. This means that future achievements by any human consciousness can potentially influence the development of similar capabilities in past time periods through morphic field connections that extend backward through time. The consciousness evolution of humanity may be a temporal process where future developments continuously influence past learning and development patterns. Dr. Marilyn Schlitzer's research on distant mental influence on biological systems shows that focused human intention can influence the physiology of distant individuals across both space and time. When experimenters focus healing intention on previously recorded physiological data, the recorded biological responses show patterns consistent with beneficial influence, suggesting that consciousness-based healing can operate retroactively across time. These findings indicate that consciousness-based healing and influence techniques may be able to reach backward through time to affect past conditions that contribute to present problems. Your current consciousness work might literally be healing past traumas and influencing past decision points to create more optimal present circumstances. The implications for personal development are revolutionary. If consciousness can access future probability information and influence past timeline conditions, then every moment offers the opportunity to optimize your entire temporal existence through coherent intention and focused awareness practices. Dr. Antonio Damasio's research on somatic markers reveals that the body's emotional guidance system operates through rapid unconscious assessments of potential future outcomes. Before your conscious mind evaluates options, your emotional system has already sampled the probable consequences of different choices and generated bodily feelings that guide decision-making toward optimal results. These somatic markers appear to operate through temporal feedback mechanisms, where your body receives information about future consequences of present choices and translates this information into immediate emotional guidance. Your gut feelings may literally be communications from future timeline experiences, reaching backward to guide present decision-making. Dr. Arne Uhrmann's research on fear conditioning and anticipatory responses shows that the human nervous system can develop accurate predictions about future threatening events and begin protective responses before conscious awareness recognizes the danger. This predictive capability appears to extend beyond normal sensory information processing to include temporal information about events that haven't yet occurred. The nervous system functions as a temporal prediction engine that continuously forecasts future conditions and prepares appropriate responses in advance. Your anxiety, excitement, anticipation, and other emotional states may be responses to future probability information that your consciousness is processing outside normal awareness channels. Dr. Rollin McCraty's research at the Institute of HeartMath reveals that the heart possesses its own extensive neural network that appears to process temporal information about future events. Heart rhythm patterns begin changing in response to future emotional stimuli several seconds before the brain shows any response, suggesting that the heart functions as a temporal sensor for consciousness. When you follow your heart in making decisions, you may be accessing temporal information about future consequences that your heart's neural networks have already evaluated. The ancient wisdom about listening to your heart appears to have a literal physiological basis in the heart's capacity for temporal information processing. Dr. Dean Radin's experiments on presentiment show that when people are about to experience emotionally significant events, their physiological systems begin responding appropriately several seconds before the events occur. This anticipatory response happens regardless of whether the future events are positive or negative, pleasant or unpleasant, suggesting that consciousness naturally samples emotional significance from future timeline positions. Your emotional system appears to be constantly scanning future probability streams and preparing your physiology for optimal responses to upcoming experiences. Feelings of unease, excitement, anticipation, or dread may be temporal communications from future probability outcomes reaching backward to prepare your present moment awareness. But these individual temporal capabilities scale up to collective effects that suggest consciousness operates through shared temporal fields. When groups of people focus collective intention on future outcomes, they appear to create temporal influence effects that can actually alter the probability distributions of future events. Dr. Lynn McTaggart's intention experiments, involving thousands of participants, have demonstrated measurable effects on target systems that sometimes appear before the group intention sessions occur. Seeds begin growing faster, patients' conditions begin improving, and social indicators begin shifting toward intended outcomes during the time periods leading up to collective intention events, suggesting that future group consciousness activities create temporal ripples that influence preceding time periods. The Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Laboratory documented similar temporal anomalies in their consciousness-machine interaction experiments. When participants were scheduled to attempt influencing random event generators, the machines often began showing non-random patterns hours before the scheduled sessions, as if the devices were responding to future intention events that hadn't yet occurred. Dr. Helmut Schmidt's retroactive PK experiments show that people can influence random sequences that were recorded in the past, but only if those sequences haven't been observed by anyone. Once quantum events are observed and their outcomes become part of someone's knowledge, they appear to become fixed and resistant to retroactive influence, suggesting that consciousness can edit unobserved past events, but not observed ones. This creates fascinating possibilities for understanding how consciousness navigates temporal probabilities. Your awareness may be continuously reaching both forward and backward through time to optimize probability sequences that haven't yet been observed or fixed through measurement, effectively editing your timeline in real time to create more favorable outcomes. Dr. William Broad's research on temporal displacement in remote viewing shows that viewers can accurately describe target locations during time periods before or after they're instructed to focus on those targets. The accuracy doesn't diminish significantly whether the remote viewing session occurs before, during, or after the target period, indicating that consciousness can access information across flexible temporal windows. This temporal flexibility in information access suggests that consciousness doesn't operate from a fixed present moment, but exists in dynamic relationship with extended temporal periods. Your awareness naturally spans past and future time frames, continuously gathering information from multiple temporal positions to inform present experience. The ancient practice of divination appears to have been based on understanding these temporal information access capabilities of consciousness. Whether through tarot cards, I Ching hexagrams, rune stones, or other symbolic systems, divinatory practices provided structured methods for consciousness to access and interpret information from future probability streams. Dr. Jessica Utz's statistical analyses of psychic research data spanning several decades show consistent evidence for temporal anomalies in consciousness that suggest awareness naturally operates across time boundaries rather than being confined to the immediate present. The effect sizes are small but robust, indicating that temporal information access is a subtle but reliable feature of human consciousness. Modern neuroscience is beginning to understand the brain mechanisms that might support temporal information processing. The default mode network, which becomes active during rest and introspection, shows patterns of connectivity that suggest it may function as a temporal integration system that processes information across extended time periods rather than just present-moment sensory input. Dr. Marcus Rachel's research on the default mode network reveals that this brain system appears to be constructing models of possible future scenarios and integrating them with memories of past experiences to create coherent narratives that guide present decision-making. The brain may naturally operate as a temporal modeling system rather than simply a present-moment information processor. When you enter states of quiet reflection, meditation, or creative flow, the default mode network becomes more active and may provide enhanced access to temporal information streams. These states of expanded awareness might represent optimal conditions for consciousness to access its natural temporal navigation capabilities. Dr. Judson Brewer's research on meditation and the default mode network shows that experienced meditators develop enhanced connectivity patterns in brain regions associated with temporal processing and future planning. Long-term meditation practice appears to strengthen the neural networks that support temporal awareness and future information access. This suggests that contemplative practices weren't just spiritual exercises, but were actually technologies for developing temporal perception capabilities. Through sustained attention training and consciousness refinement techniques, practitioners could enhance their natural ability to access information from future probability streams and use this guidance for optimal decision-making. The Tibetan concept of Bardo describes consciousness states between death and rebirth, where awareness exists outside linear time and can perceive the entirety of its karmic timeline as a unified pattern. Modern research on near-death experiences often reports similar phenomena where people perceive their entire life timeline from an expanded temporal perspective that transcends sequential time. Dr. Kenneth Ring's research on near-death experiences frequently documents reports of life reviews, where individuals perceive not just their past experiences, but also probable future outcomes stemming from their past actions. These experiences suggest that consciousness can access comprehensive temporal information that spans entire lifetime trajectories rather than being limited to immediate present awareness. But you don't need extreme altered states to access temporal information. Research indicates that ordinary dream states provide natural access to future probability information through temporal displacement effects that occur when the normal space-time constraints on consciousness are relaxed during sleep. Dr. Stanley Krippner's research on precognitive dreams documents thousands of cases where people accurately dream about future events that later occur exactly as dreamed. The dreams typically occur days, weeks, or sometimes months before the corresponding waking events, suggesting that sleeping consciousness can access future information across extended temporal periods. The mechanism appears to involve the relaxation of normal space-time constraints on consciousness during sleep states, allowing awareness to sample information from future probability streams and integrate this information into dream narratives. Your dreams may be nightly excursions into future timeline possibilities that provide temporal guidance for waking decision-making. Dr. Montague Ullman's dream research shows that precognitive dream information tends to focus on emotionally significant future events that will have meaningful impact on the dreamer's life trajectory. The temporal information access appears to be selectively tuned toward future experiences that have high personal relevance and emotional significance. This selective focus suggests that consciousness doesn't randomly access future information, but intelligently samples temporal data that will be most useful for navigation and decision-making. Your temporal awareness system appears to automatically filter for future information that has optimal guidance value for your life development. Dr. Charles Honiton's research on Ganzfeld experiments shows that when normal sensory input is minimized through gentle sensory deprivation techniques, people show enhanced ability to access non-local information, including temporal displacement effects. Creating quiet, meditative conditions appears to optimize consciousness for temporal information processing. The Ganzfeld technique involves relaxing in comfortable darkness while listening to gentle static noise that masks external sounds, creating conditions where consciousness can naturally access expanded information channels, including temporal streams. Participants in Ganzfeld sessions frequently report accurate information about future target materials that won't be randomly selected until after their session ends. These findings suggest that developing temporal perception abilities requires learning to quiet the normal information processing systems that keep consciousness focused on immediate present sensory input. When you create internal stillness and sensory calm, consciousness can naturally access its temporal navigation capabilities. Dr. Russell Targ's work training operational remote viewers for intelligence applications developed practical protocols for enhancing temporal perception abilities. Viewers learned to access information about future target locations and events with accuracy levels that significantly exceeded chance, demonstrating that temporal information access can be developed as a reliable skill. The training protocols involve learning to enter meditative states where normal linear thinking is suspended, allowing consciousness to access non-local and temporal information streams. Through practice, viewers develop the ability to distinguish between imagination, memory, and genuine temporal information access. Dr. Stefan Schwartz's research on associative remote viewing shows that temporal information access can be enhanced through structured protocols that guide consciousness towards specific temporal targets. When viewers are given precise temporal coordinates and clear feedback about accuracy, they can develop reliable access to future information streams. The key insight from remote viewing research is that consciousness appears to navigate temporal information through associative networks rather than linear time sequences. Future information is accessed through meaningful connections and associations rather than chronological proximity to the present moment. Dr. Hal Puthoff's theoretical work on quantum fluctuations and consciousness suggests that awareness interfaces with the quantum vacuum field that underlies space-time itself. This quantum field contains information about all possible space-time configurations, including future probability states that consciousness can access through quantum resonance effects. When consciousness achieves sufficient coherence and focus, it may be able to entangle with quantum information patterns in the vacuum field that correspond to future probability configurations. This quantum entanglement would provide direct access to future information through non-local correlation effects that transcend normal space-time limitations. The practical implications are extraordinary. If consciousness can reliably access temporal information and influence probability outcomes through temporal feedback loops, then developing these capabilities becomes essential for optimal navigation through life's complex decision landscapes. Every choice you face, career decisions, relationship choices, investment opportunities, health interventions, creative projects, exists within probability fields that extend across past and future timelines. Your consciousness has natural capabilities for sampling these temporal probability spaces and selecting choices that align with optimal future outcomes. Dr. May's work with practical applications of precognitive abilities shows that people can learn to use temporal information access for enhanced decision-making in business, investing, creative projects, and personal relationships. When individuals develop reliable access to future probability information, their decision-making effectiveness increases significantly across multiple life domains. The training involves learning to distinguish between wishful thinking, fear-based projections, and genuine temporal information. Authentic future information has specific qualitative characteristics that can be recognized through practice. It tends to be emotionally neutral, specific rather than vague, and often contains surprising elements that couldn't be derived from present-moment knowledge. Dr. Utt's meta-analyses of applied PSI research show that temporal information access capabilities can be developed through structured training programs with success rates that far exceed chance. Participants typically achieve 60 to 70 accuracy in temporal information tasks compared to the 20 accuracy expected by chance alone. The most effective training protocols combine meditation techniques for consciousness refinement with structured exercises for temporal information access and rigorous feedback systems for calibrating accuracy. Students learn to enter optimal consciousness states and then apply focused attention towards specific temporal information targets. Dr. Charles Tart's research on state-specific learning suggests that temporal information access capabilities are enhanced when consciousness learns to operate from expanded awareness states that transcend normal space-time constraints. These states can be cultivated through meditation, contemplative practices, and consciousness expansion techniques. When you regularly practice entering expanded awareness states, you develop familiarity with consciousness modes that naturally access temporal information. Over time, you can learn to access these states intentionally and use them for enhanced decision-making and life navigation. But the ultimate potential may involve learning to live from expanded temporal awareness as your normal state rather than accessing it only during special practices or altered states. Advanced practitioners report developing continuous background awareness of future probability streams that informs all their choices and actions. In this state, life becomes a fluid dance with temporal possibilities where every moment offers access to optimal future probabilities and the ability to influence those probabilities through coherent intention and action. Decision-making transforms from reactive choice-making to creative collaboration with temporal probability fields. The ancient teaching about living in the eternal now may actually describe consciousness operating from expanded temporal awareness that encompasses past and future within present moment experience. The eternal now isn't a frozen present, but a dynamic temporal field where all times exist in creative interaction. Dr. Amit Goswami's research on quantum consciousness suggests that advanced practitioners can learn to operate from what he calls quantum self-awareness that transcends linear time limitations. In these states, consciousness gains access to the quantum field of infinite possibilities that underlies all space-time configurations. From quantum self-awareness, you can participate directly in the creation of your temporal experience by consciously selecting which probability streams to collapse into physical reality through focused attention and intention. Life becomes conscious participation in reality creation across multiple temporal dimensions. The future evolution of human consciousness may involve widespread development of temporal perception abilities that allow collective humanity to navigate increasingly complex global challenges through enhanced access to future possibility information. As more individuals develop these capabilities, collective decision-making could become guided by temporal wisdom rather than limited present moment data. Dr. Laszlo's research on collective consciousness evolution suggests that humanity is developing enhanced temporal awareness capabilities as part of its natural evolutionary development. The increasing reports of precognitive experiences, temporal anomalies, and consciousness phenomena may indicate that our species is evolving beyond linear time consciousness. This evolution could enable humanity to foresee and prevent catastrophic outcomes while actively selecting probability streams that lead to optimal collective futures. Instead of stumbling blindly through historical development, our species could begin consciously navigating toward beneficial timeline possibilities. The implications extend beyond individual development to include the conscious evolution of human civilization itself. If consciousness can access future probability information and influence outcome selection through temporal feedback loops, then developing these capabilities becomes essential for species survival and thriving in an increasingly complex world. Your participation in developing temporal perception abilities isn't just personal growth. Its contribution to the collective evolution of human consciousness toward expanded temporal awareness that could determine the future trajectory of our entire species. The quantum field of temporal possibilities is responsive to consciousness interaction. Every moment of expanded temporal awareness, every successful access to future information, every conscious selection of optimal probability streams contributes to the collective field of human temporal navigation capabilities. As you develop your natural temporal perception abilities, you join a growing network of individuals who are pioneering the next stage of human consciousness evolution, the development of expanded temporal awareness that transcends linear time limitations and enables conscious participation in reality creation across past, present, and future dimensions. The time loops of consciousness aren't just scientific phenomena to study, they're invitation to participate consciously in the temporal orchestration of your existence. Your future self is already reaching backward through time to guide your present choices toward optimal outcomes. The question isn't whether these temporal feedback loops exist. Research has established their reality. The question is whether you'll remain unconsciously guided by temporal influences or learn to participate consciously in the temporal navigation of your life trajectory through expanded awareness that embraces your existence as a temporal field phenomenon rather than a point consciousness trapped in linear time. Your consciousness naturally spans temporal dimensions. Your decisions are continuously informed by future probability information. Your intentions can influence past conditions through temporal feedback effects. The future of human potential lies in conscious development of these natural temporal navigation capabilities that transform existence from reactive experience into creative collaboration with the infinite possibilities that exist across all timelines. The temporal field of consciousness is waiting for your conscious participation. The future is calling backward through time, inviting you to embrace your role as a conscious navigator of probability streams across the eternal dance of temporal possibility that is your true nature as awareness itself.